Welcome to Idiot Seeking Village. Today, Adam, like Derek Zoolander asking why male models, we're going to ask ourselves the question, why Greenland?
Well, according to my last Greenland short, it's the Epstein files. And I will expect you to try to change that, but I don't know if you can.
I think your short said that they were buried there, which, hey,
Yes.
look, I think is equally as plausible as what I'm about to go through. But last episode, right, you and I were just kind of musing and putting together just different threads, right? Like, how do all these individual actions that have been going on for the better part of the last year, how do they start to, like, fit together, right? And I had some notes on Greenland, but I deliberately avoided bringing it up because I knew there was more there and I hadn't really kind of assembled my thoughts on it. And so I realized afterwards that it hit me. When you and I first had this idea for the podcast, I knew I wanted to do an episode about Libertarian Utopias. And I think I told you about one of them specifically at the time.
The Bears one,
yes,
right?
the Bears one. And so I realized, it finally hit me. It clicked. All these years of this shit that I've been reading and kind of going on through finally hit me. Greenland is the connective tissue, is kind of the final boss of these libertarian utopias. And so I think it gives us the perfect segue to move into, okay, so what the hell is going on with Greenland and why is it such a thing all of a sudden right now? So I guess the real question, Adam, is how do you feel about independent libertarian utopias?
Right now curious about why Greenland would be one of them and not some other place in the world. But I'm not very much on the libertarian front. Mm-hmm. So I'm very pro utopians.
Okay.
I like utopia.
All right. Yeah, I think it's an alluring concept, right, of building a better and more perfect society. And here's the thing, right? Yeah. Libertarians very much, every generation has this group of rich guys, and they all have two things in common. Is one, they really, 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 really hate paying taxes. And two, more often than not, they have really questionable opinions about age of consent laws. And so they think because that they were successful at some business venture, they had the right idea at the right time, or they had the right connections to bring their ideas to life and got wealthy because of them. They think that they're good at everything. And so now they think they'll be the ones to crack the code. And it's the typical hubris, right? I got rich, and so obviously all of my ideas are correct and people should listen to me. And this is what we're seeing play out with Greenland right now. But the story here goes back at least decades, and you could even say, in a way, centuries, if you count some of the historical precedent that they're working off of. And so what Greenland is part of this recurring fantasy of what if we could just leave, start over somewhere with better rules that we write ourselves. And to your point about utopias, you like utopias. It's appealing. It's a great pitch, especially if you're the one who gets to write the rules. But there's a pattern behind all of these that's worth examining because they tell us a lot about what happens when you prioritize the concept of freedom from over the freedom to. And that's a key critical differentiator for why these things typically fail and what we're starting to see today. So Greenland isn't like some novel idea that came out of nowhere. It's just the latest version of an old dream backed by new money.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I got you, buddy. I'm covering you. So I think first and foremost, we want to kind of talk about where did this come from, right? So modern libertarianism, especially like American libertarianism, comes from guys like Robert Nozick and Murray Rothbard back in the 1970s. And they basically asked, if the state is coercive by nature, why not just opt out? Create voluntary communities where people choose their level of government through quote unquote foot voting, essentially moving to wherever place has the rules that you prefer. And you can call it like an exit framework, right? And so this exit framework is foundational to all of these libertarian utopian experiments. Contrast it for a second, right? That foot voting with voice politics, traditional democratic representation, where you stay and fight for change within an existing system. This is what we talked about in our first episode on redistricting and representation. The appeal here is, instead of trying to convince millions of voters to enact change that you want to see because you believe you're right and everyone else disagrees or isn't seeing it and fights against it, just gather your people and go build something new somewhere else with the rules that you want in place.
That's all.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
Easy peasy.
It's a great idea if you completely ignore the fact that people have ties to their physical home, to family, that they have children who attend schools, who have friendships, that there are networks, that are communities that are all interwoven and connected. People do migrate, they move, they go to new places seeking new opportunity, but the overwhelming majority of people tend to avoid doing that, right? People are not as fluid as capital because we have relationships, we have network, we are part of a society, we are part of a culture together. And these networks and relationships are important. But these guys...
Or...
Go ahead.
If you don't have any of those things and you're just like... You live in a poor state and you're like, wow, I can't... What if I believe in abortion or I believe in this? And I'm like, all right, I want to go to a blue state. Oh, wait, I can't afford to live there. Oh, now I'm fucked.
Or you have so much money and you believe in rugged individualism. And so you're just like, well, I did it, so why shouldn't someone else? And so many of these libertarians these days, they come out of Silicon Valley. They come out of the tech bubble. And a lot of those guys, for various reasons, and there's plenty of famous examples, are essentially single dudes who had no connections. They abandoned their families in a lot of cases, right? Their parents mostly, right? Not like wives and children. And moved there to basically rub elbows with other like-minded dudes, and found a lot of the tech companies that exist today. And a lot of that startup culture comes from guys just basically fucking off from where they grew up and leaving their community and coming and starting a new life. And so they're like, well, if I did it, why can't everyone? And you go, yeah, that's great. If you're like between the age of like 16 and 25, that's perfect, right? But earlier than that or later than that.
If you're like Elon Musk and just don't give a shit.
Well, Elon Musk hates his father. Errol Musk is a piece of shit. As much as Elon Musk is a piece of shit, Errol's an even bigger piece of shit. He might be on the level of Fred Trump Sr. piece of shit father, and which is why those two are such birds of a feather.
That's possible. I mean, but like Elon, he clearly doesn't care about like him seeing his children or his relationship with his children or how many children he has with how many women he has. Yeah. It's not like there's like a form of permanence in his life. There's no form of stability in his life for anyone else except for him.
No, absolutely. I think I forget his first wife's name, something with a J. I'm not gonna. I don't have. We don't want to talk about Elon Musk, but he basically, the stories at their wedding, he basically whispered into her ear like, "I'm in charge now," or something similar to that. Right? He's like, "I own you now," was the thing, and she was like, "We were college students. Like, what the fuck?" Right? Like, what kind of attitude is this? But that's exactly. So you get a guy like Elon Musk who views even his wife and his children not as family, but as property. That's basically so many of these Silicon Valley people and these libertarian-minded folks, right? So again, a bit of a digression. I don't want to talk about them at the moment, but let's go back. It's the 1960s, it's the 1970s, and you're a freedom-minded, libertarian-minded, I hate the government, I just want to do whatever I want to do guy. The world, it's the 1960s, 1970s. The world doesn't have like uninhabited or unclaimed territory anymore, effectively, right? It all belongs to one sovereign nation or another, or it might be disputed between multiple ones. But it's not the age of exploration. It's not Columbus sailing the ocean blue in 1492, right? It's and finding quote unquote uninhabited land to conquer and colonize and to build his endeavors. Of course, obviously, that's not the case. There were people there, but this attitude of, hey, well, I could just find this and take it, plant a flag, and it's mine now. So you're gathering your friends, Adam, and you're going to start a new society. But there's these pesky existing governments everywhere you look. So where do you go?
I would figure an island somewhere, but apparently not.
Well, you're close. The sea. The solution is go where there's no government at all. And in the 60s and 70s, the first view was the ocean, specifically international waters outside of the territorial boundaries of any land mass, is the new frontier. So the first attempt at these libertarian utopias was to create micronations at sea. First one,
abandoned oil rigs and stuff.
well, we're gonna have a couple of these. So the first one that we're gonna talk about, and this is the fun one, and then it's gonna get shit from here, man. It's like the first movie in a series, right? Jurassic Park. There's what, 6, 7 Jurassic Park movies at this point. First one obviously is the best, and everything after is. So we're gonna start high and we're gonna get low from here. So the first one I want to talk about is the Principality of SeaLand. A guy, Paddy Roy Bates, was a former British Army major, and in the 1960s, he was running a pirate radio station, which was a pretty common occurrence at the time. The BBC essentially gave rock and roll bands for, very conservative, pearl-clutching reasons. They only played rock and roll for like an hour a week. And so there was this huge demand from British youth and others to listen to the music that they wanted to listen to. They wanted to listen to the Beatles, to the Stones, to the Kinks, right? And they couldn't get that through the government-approved radio stations. So he was one of these pirate radio broadcasters in the North Sea who was basically running an illegal radio station and blasting music over the airwaves. They actually made a movie about this. It's actually pretty cool. It's a fun one to watch. So all around England were these things called Monsell sea forts. They were concrete and steel anti-aircraft platforms built in the 1940s during the war to shoot down German bombers targeting London. After World War II, the military abandoned them. And by the 1960s, they'd become prime real estate for these pirate broadcasters. Because the alternative to getting onto one of these platforms was you get a big boat, right? And you float around and you broadcast. If you could find a kind of a set place to set up your equipment and whatnot, it's a little bit more appealing than having to live on a boat full time. So on Christmas Eve, 1966, Roy Bates and his family infiltrated one of them called Ruff's Tower, which was about 7 miles off the coast of Suffolk, England. Bates's plan was simple: use the platform to broadcast his pirate radio station from international waters, beyond UK regulatory reach. He seized it from a competing group of pirate broadcasters who were already there. And then, here's the fun part, another group of pirate broadcasters attempted to storm the tower and kick him out, and him and his family defended it with both firearms and Molotov cocktails.
Oh my goodness. So this is some legitimate seizing.
This is some, you hear pirate radio and you think, okay, radio. No, this was like some legitimate piracy going on between these guys. Yeah. So Bates is there with his family. They kick out a bunch of, pirate radio guys. They set up their own pirate radio station, and then they defend it from other pirate radio groups who are attempting to broadcast this stuff. And they do so violently. And I absolutely love it. So about 8 months later, in August of 1967, the UK Marine Broadcasting Act was passed, and it outlawed pirate radio from offshore structures. So Bates was basically operating this legal gray area, and now it's no longer a legal gray area. He is firmly doing something illegal. And then about 3 weeks later, in September, was his wife's birthday. So Bates goes out and declares Ruff's Tower the independent Principality of SeaLand. And as a birthday gift, he crowned his wife Joan, Princess Joan, and styled himself as Prince Roy. They created a flag, a national anthem, stamps, currency, and even a national motto, E Mare Libertas, from the sea, freedom.
Really?
Yeah, and we're out of business on the radio. What are we going to do? Well, let's make a country. And
I thought they had purchased the platform. I never knew they just took it.
No, they were just squatting. They were squatting for all intents and purposes. Yeah. Abandoned military hardware. That was, and so, yeah, well, actually, I think we'll get to that in a second. So they actually, in a sense, got a favorable legal ruling around this. And so in 1968, a couple months later, within the next year, some British workmen tried to service a nav buoy near the platform. Michael Bates, Roy's son, fired some warning shots to get them to go away. The UK came, of course, and arrested both of the Bates, the son, Michael, and Roy, on firearms charges and brought them to court in England. The judge in the case ruled that Ruff's Tower sat beyond Britain's 3 nautical mile territorial limit at the time, because it was 7 miles out. And the judge goes, they live outside of UK jurisdiction. And they dismissed the case because the UK courts had no authority over international waters. So Roy Bates takes this as de facto recognition of the Principality of SeaLand's sovereignty. And then a few years later, in 1975, he formalized it with the Constitution, establishing SeaLand as a hereditary constitutional monarchy. So at this point, they've been out there for nearly a decade. They have money, they have stamps, a national anthem, they have a flag, a motto, and they have a constitution. And they have what he believes to be de facto recognition from the UK government that they are not subject to the UK's law because of this case.
Gotta love his wife and kids who go along with this.
It's amazing. I have no idea. There's got to be a story somewhere. I couldn't find it documenting the family's activities. And I think I want to dig into it a little bit more, but it's definitely worth looking. So fast forward a little bit to 1978. SeaLand had a moment of genuine international geopolitical drama. So Alexander Achenbach was a German lawyer who had a SeaLand passport. And he'd been helping promote some schemes to try to turn the platform into an offshore luxury casino. He and Roy disagreed over the direction of that casino project. And so Bates, at a certain point, went on a business trip to Austria and supposedly might be kind of a ruse by Achenbach to get him off the platform. Achenbach ended up hiring German and Dutch mercenaries to storm the platform and to take control of it by force. So these mercenaries arrived by helicopter with a film crew. They captured Michael Bates, Roy's son, tied him together, and locked him in SeaLand's solitary prison cell, which was just a dark room inside one of the concrete support pillars that the platform was sitting on out in the sea. One mercenary suggested throwing him into the sea just to get rid of him. After 3 days, they exiled him to the Netherlands on a fishing trawler that was passing. Achenbach declared himself the prime minister of SeaLand.
It was a coup.
It was a coup. It was a coup by an insider, exactly. So Michael and Roy ended up returning with their own armed group of mercenaries and launching a counter coup early one morning. Shots were fired, and the Dutch and German mercenaries were like, you know what? I'm out. This ain't worth it. They basically dropped their weapons and surrendered immediately. So here's where it gets fun. Achenbach, I believe he was a German citizen as well. Because he held a SeaLand passport, they charged him with treason and held him for ransom. So they were asking at the time some $35,000. Germany sent one of its London-based diplomats from the London embassy to negotiate Achenbach's release. And after a few weeks, Bates relented and he freed Achenbach. And Bates turns around and the family claims that the diplomatic visit constituted a de facto recognition of SeaLand by Germany. So now not only do they have de facto recognition by the UK that they are an independent sovereign nation because they're outside of UK maritime law, but now they're saying because Germany treated with us with an official diplomat, Germany recognizes us as a country as well. We're not just domestic, we're international, baby.
Holy crap.
By the way, Germany denies that. They're just like, we just sent a diplomat to negotiate with one of our citizens who was captured just to release him from prison. We don't recognize them as a country. But, of course, don't let that get in the way of a good story. In 1987, so we're fast-forwarding about another decade here, the UK extended its territorial waters from 3 to 12 nautical miles. And what does that do? That placed Ruff's Tower squarely within British territory. And so the UK's official claim is that SeaLand is simply an abandoned platform in British waters. And of course, the Bates family is like, we've been here for over 20 years. We disagree, and we're going to continue to assert sovereignty. So SeaLand survived, but it's gone from being a pirate radio station to a failed casino. It's evolved over the years. One of the big things that they did to generate money and revenue was selling passports. Here's what happens, though. At one point, a Spanish group basically sold fake SeaLand passports. They counterfeited the passports. An estimate was that they did about 150,000 counterfeit SeaLand passports. And many of them they sold to Eastern European criminal groups. And a lot of them ended up being tied to high-profile crimes, including the murder of fashion designer Gianni Versace. Yeah. So basically, Eastern European criminal groups and gangs were using SeaLand passports to move around because SeaLand passports are bullshit, but were being accepted to some degree. In 1997, the Bates family basically were like, we revoke all the SeaLand passports, including the legitimate ones that we issued ourselves. We can't do this anymore. They're all null and void. So then starting in the early 2000s, they got approached by a couple of tech entrepreneurs, because of course they did, to create an offshore data hosting facility, right? Imagine a server farm that's beyond regulatory reach. What do you got there? You've got illegal gambling sites, you've got porn sites, you've got drug trade, right? You've got basically an early version of the Silk Road is essentially what was pitched. Apparently one potential client who wanted to have a server farm was an organ transplant company dealing with the transfer of organs, which you can only imagine were not exactly collected consensually. Yeah.
No.
So ultimately, the family was like, you know what? This is a lot of money. This is a good deal, but we're not going to get involved with these people. So that went away. So now, today, SeaLand's main industry is selling aristocratic titles through its online store. You can become a lord or lady, count or countess, duke or duchess. And they also sell merchandise, stamps, coins, and other things emblazoned with SeaLand's crest. So Adam, this comes to what the most important thing of this episode is. I have something to tell you. You are in fact podcasting in the presence of royalty.
Boy. I never knew that. Oh, man, this changes everything.
For the cost of $29.99 plus shipping, I have been ennobled as a member of the aristocracy and am an official Lord of SeaLand.
I'm not worthy.
This goes against every deeply anarchistic bone in my body, but I'm going to embrace it and run with it while I can.
A title's a title. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to throw that away?
I'm a lord. Yeah, you know what? And I think I'm going to have to insist on you addressing me by my title.
Lord
Richard.
Very well. Lord Dick.
Lord Dick. Hell hail Lord Dick.
You know, it's like, so that's a lot of decades has gone by.
Yeah.
Who's living there now?
I'm glad you asked that. So Roy Bates died in 2012. So he's been dead about a decade. He lived to 91, which is pretty damn good.
Wow.
Yeah. His son, Michael, the one who got shot at the buoy workers and was also the one captured by the mercenaries, he now styles himself Prince Michael, and he lives on the English mainland, along with the rest of the royal family. Basically, the facility today, Ruff's Tower, is only ever occupied by like a caretaker who's there to do some basic maintenance because it's now just a rusting steel and concrete structure in the middle of the sea and falling apart. That said, SeaLand holds the Guinness World Record for smallest area to lay claim to nation status. And this is success for a kind of a libertarian-minded person trying to create their own country out of whole cloth. This is the best case scenario for like ocean-based libertarian projects. This is a family that's living on the mainland, running an online merchant store, selling titles and nobility, maintaining a slowly deteriorating World War II era anti-aircraft artillery platform, and that technically exists as a nation, but functionally operates as a quirky business venture that's essentially a meme.
I mean, it's successful, but it's like, it's one family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not very different than my house. It seems like a whole lot of work for that. But hey, to each his own.
I think there's some notes around there. Again, there's more to this. I don't think they ever really had more than 5 people living on the platform at a time, right? So yeah, very small. Clearly, you're gonna have a hard time dating, among other things. So it's it's an interesting situation. But this technically is success. So if that's success, what does failure look like? So I'm going to bring us again 1960s, 1968 specifically, something called Operation Atlantis. So this was started by a dude, Werner Stifel, who was a pharmaceutical entrepreneur. His family had fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s, as so many did, and he ran a company called Stifel Labs, which by the time of his death in 2006 was actually the largest privately owned dermatological company in the world. He had over 2,500 employees in 100 plus countries. And so this is a guy, right? This is a pretty typical 20th century success story that you hear about. But despite his success, Stifel feared the rise of socialism. And he became convinced that, quote unquote, free men and women of the United States ultimately lacked a true safe haven. So, like many of these guys, too many people, he was inspired by Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, specifically the concept of Galt's Gulch, which is where productive individuals withdraw from what they perceive as a parasitic society. Every libertarian's Bible right there. So Stifel decided to literally build Atlantis. He believed the project would, quote unquote, test the hypothesis that a free capitalist society can exist and flourish in today's world. Now, I don't know, Werner, but I'm not quite sure what about what we're living through is not a free capitalist society. There's a lot of capitalism that we're dealing with these days, so I'm not sure where he gets that. But again, that was his opinion. That was the 1960s. So he came up with a 3-stage plan. He worked out of the Sawyerkill Motel in Saugerties, New York, which was near one of his company's plants. He formed the Atlantis Development Company and outlined a vision. Phase 1 of Atlantis was the motel. They would gather libertarians in one location to build a community and prepare. Basically, the motel served as the headquarters and a proxy community where participants could practice voluntary cooperation and planning and get to know each other while trying to work on the larger project. Phase 2 of Atlantis was acquire a ship. So basically get an ocean-going vessel and declare it an independent nation while out in international waters. Phase 3 of Atlantis was take that ship and then build an artificial island. So create a sovereign country as close to U.S. shores as possible by building an artificial island on a shallow reef. Right? The idea was find a reef or shoal just barely below the surface and then dredge sand from the ocean floor until it rose above the waterline, creating new land. And the ship would, of course, support construction and transportation, life support for the crew and the people. So he published a monthly newsletter, the Atlantis News, to recruit participants. And he attracted, of course, other libertarian thinkers at the time. And he generated a mailing list of interested people. And in March of 1969, he announced that he'd found a promising location. Prickly Pear Keys in the Leeward Islands would be their target ultimately for the reef. Adam, you want to guess if this worked?
I mean, I'm pretty sure since I've never heard of it, I'm going to say no. But I can only imagine the cost, and regardless of how much money he thinks he had, he's sure as hell not going to have enough.
Pretty much, yeah. So we're going to go through five distinct events here. So first, their Hudson River launch. Again, they're up in Saugerties, New York. The first ship caught fire in the Hudson River upon launch. The Atlanteans were undeterred, and they basically repaired the ship. So, number 2, they repaired the ship, they got it, it didn't sink in the Hudson, woohoo! Instead, they were able to sail it down to the Bahamas. And then they hit heavy weather, and it promptly sank.
Jesus Christ.
So, number 3.
Strike 2.
Right, so now coming up, strike 3. They go for their first artificial reef or artificial island attempt. So this was obviously phase 3, right? We're kind of getting into that position. The boats haven't worked out so far so well, right? Phase 1 kind of worked out. They got people together at the motel. Phase 2 is kind of a little bit hit or miss, but they're like, oh, we learned enough. Let's jump to number 3. So they actually first targeted an artificial island at a place called Silver Shoals, which is a shallow reef about 85 miles north of Hispaniola, right? Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So that's between, right, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and the Bahamas in that general vicinity. So go there, dredge sand from the ocean floor, and deposit on the reef to create land above the waterline. They go there and they begin the dredging operation. And they even recovered, and this is pretty cool, silver coins from a nearby Spanish shipwreck. They were actually like finding pirate treasure while trying to build this island. And I think it's pretty cool. And I would take that as a pretty good omen, right? If I'm running this project, I'd be like, this is awesome. We're finding all these gold coins and silver coins.
It's like, maybe we should pivot and just be pirates and just dig up money.
So here's the thing, though, right? Technically, disturbing shipwrecks like that is actually considered piracy. And so the Haitian government and the Navy and their Coast Guard got a heads up like, hey, there's some pirates diving for shipwrecks in the area, and they're doing so without any permission or anything like that. So the Haitians sent a gunboat. The captain saw what they were doing and was like, they're thieves and pirates, and ordered them to leave the area immediately or be shot. The Atlanteans, they had no weapons and they had no capacity to deal with an international incident. Basically, they abandoned the artificial island that was partially under construction, and pretty much at that point, most of the members were like, fuck this, I'm out, and they would head back to the US.
They were just peaceful people. They no guns, no way of defending themselves.
So, Werner Stifel, undeterred. Number 4, he went and he purchased an oil rig. And his goal was he planned to tow it and deposit it at the Misteriosa Bank, which lies between Honduras and Cuba. It's basically another shallow underwater rise where he was hoping to anchor the platform and use that as the basis for their offshore platform. Ultimately, again, bad weather. The rig was blown out to sea by a hurricane and destroyed before it even got to the site.
Lord, it's like the universe is telling you, go back to what you're good at. This is not working out.
I just love that he keeps doing this shit during what seems to be hurricane season. Like, would you pay attention for one fucking second? I know you think like that weather and climate is a liberal hoax. I know that's a modern thing, not a 1960s thing. But for fuck's sake, it's hurricane season. Don't try to do large-scale operations and infrastructure during hurricane season in the Caribbean. What is wrong with you, man? How stupid are you?
Or start an island in the Caribbean where there's hurricanes. But I'll give him credit. I mean, a dumber man, a wiser man, however you would look at it, would have quit. I probably would have been like, this is stupid. I'm giving up. I'm going to give up. But you get success sometimes by just continuing the process, even if you fail. What is it? Is it Edison's? He failed 100 times before he got the light bulb thing?
Yeah, something like that.
I got to give him credit. I mean, keeps trying.
I mean, in the same vein, the foothills of Everest are littered with the bodies of ambitious people who wouldn't give up. So,
Yes.
Maybe the lesson here is everyone calm the fuck down. Relax. Take it easy. Read a book. Eat some fruit. Go lay on the couch.
Eat some fruit.
Yeah. So, one last attempt. Stifel, we got to go for 5, right? You can't quit at 4. You got to go for 5. His last effort was to actually buy an island off the coast of Belize. And his intention was to go through legal means and get free port status for that island from the Belizean government. Eventually, he's like, you know what? I'm old. I'm tired of dealing with this bureaucracy. And he's like, fuck it. Eventually, he took the island and he put it up for sale, and he just quit the Atlantis project altogether.
So it's like, it was basically just attempts. Nothing ever was able to even come about it because of the fact that, like you said in the beginning, there's really very little real estate out there to just pop yourself into this new form of government.
It's not stopping anyone from trying. But yeah, so far, Patty Roy Bates and his family lived on that platform in the North Sea. Doesn't really sound too appealing to me, but then again, he's English, right? He's had worse weather and worse conditions. And yeah, these guys, I mean, what Stifel accomplished was basically he got a libertarian cruise together a few times. So that's pretty much the sum total of his accomplishments so far. Yep. Yeah. So there's more, Adam. So while Stifel was battling and fleeing from Haitian gunboats, and Roy Bates was chucking Molotovs at would-be pirates and fighting off German and Dutch mercenaries, a Las Vegas real estate millionaire, Michael Oliver, was planning something even more ambitious. Like Stifel, Oliver was an immigrant. He was Lithuanian-born, and he feared the rise of totalitarianism in America. And by totalitarianism, he meant riots, protests, welfare programs, and deficit spending. He was convinced American masses were susceptible to demagoguery and wanted a hedge against collapse. Now, with the benefit of, hindsight, Adam, I wonder where he got that idea from. As we say this in the year of our Lord 2026. But, yeah, anyway.
Head of the curve.
Yeah. So Oliver formed the Ocean Life Research Foundation, and he claimed to have raised $100 million for the project, offices in New York and London, and with a vision, a libertarian society with no taxation, welfare, subsidies, or any form of economic interventionism. It would be supported by tourism, fishing, and light industry. And he assembled a mailing list with some 15,000 interested parties. So he had a pretty good little group going here. So like Stifel, Oliver had a semi-submerged target in mind, the Minerva Reefs, which were 2 submerged atolls in the South Pacific, about 260 miles southwest of the island nation of Tonga. His rationale was, in the post-World War II era of decolonization, that he could find an uninhabited territory that no state wanted, or that governments would be willing to sell. And the reefs seemed perfect. They were way outside of any nation's territorial waters, they were rarely visited, and they were completely uninhabited. Though, that said, really freaking isolated. So, in August of 1971, Oliver hired a dredging company out of Australia to bring barges of sand and deposit them on the reefs to raise them above the waterline. It cost him some $10,000 a week to do this at the time, 1971. That's house money at that time. He constructed a small tower, planted a national flag, and started issuing stamps in his own currency, which were actually bimetallic coins that he called Minerva dollars. By January of 1972, Oliver declared independence. He appointed a guy named Morris Davis as his president and sent letters announcing the Republic of Minerva to over 100 nations. You want to guess how many nations recognized it?
1.
0.
Man, I always thought that it would be that one rogue dictator nation who'd been like, hey, let's recognize this guy.
You know what? He only sent it to 100 nations. There were probably, at the time, 150, 170 of them. Something like that. So he definitely could have gone for some low-hanging fruit and gotten, rub some elbows of some dictators and gotten on their good side. But no, every nation he sent it to did not recognize the Republic of Minerva. So
they even respond to him or just chucked it?
Well, so here's what happens. The king of Tonga, remember, these atolls are technically Tongan territory. He caught wind of it, and he goes, yeah, no, dude. And I agree with the king. As a fellow member of the aristocracy, this is bullshit on Oliver's part. The Minerva Reefs had long been a fishing ground for Tongans and Fijians, and they had a lot of historical and cultural connections to the site that ran deep. So the king is like, no, this is our territory historically, and you can't just come in here and take it. And by the way, not only the Tongans, but also the Fijians were like, hey, if these people can claim Minerva, what's going to stop them from doing it elsewhere in other territory that we believe is ours historically and traditionally? So in February of 1972, a conference of Pacific states, Australia, New Zealand, Tonga, Fiji, Nauru, Samoa, and the Cook Islands all met together. Tonga made a formal claim over the Minerva Reefs, and all other of those states recognized that claim. So then in June of 1972, the king of Tonga personally led an invasion force of Minerva on board the royal yacht. The expeditionary force included members of the Tongan Defense Forces, ministers and officials of the king's government, freed convicts for labor. Basically, the king opened up his one jail and was like, you're doing manual labor, let's go. And a 4-piece brass band. Minerva had no permanent garrison, it had no permanent population, so there was no resistance. The band played the Tongan national anthem, and the defense forces went ashore at low tide. The king personally tore down the Republic of Minerva's flag and decoration plaque, and he read a proclamation annexing the reefs as Tongan territory. He renamed them. I'm not going to try to pronounce these names, they're crazy. The convict detail dismantled the concrete platform and the tower that Oliver's team had built. And the South Pacific Forum then officially recognized Tonga's claim in September of 1972. In the meantime, Michael Oliver, he fired his president, Morris Davis, and the project collapsed and the ocean gradually reclaimed the sand. Fast forward to 1982, Morris Davis, the former president of the Republic of Minerva, then decided to go back. He led a group of Americans to occupy the reef. After 3 weeks, Tongan defense forces forced them off, and ever since then, no serious attempt to claim Minerva has occurred.
Lord.
So, Minerva was a failure, just out and out. I would say Minerva, I don't know, is it more of a failure than the Atlanteans? I don't know. It's debatable. I mean, it might be about the same level, though it seems like they probably had a more permanent structure than the Atlanteans ever did. Although they got their asses kicked by the locals. So, Michael Oliver, Minerva's a failure. He doesn't give up. He creates a new organization called the Phoenix Foundation. And later, this foundation will support a separatist movement in what is now known as Vanuatu during the decolonization from European forces. He made an attempt to turn the Abaco Islands in the Bahamas into a private libertarian territory. And he also was involved in other schemes involving arms dealers and others to purchase land from various decolonizing territories. So all of these failed when actual governments with actual power said no.
Right. You don't have the guns, you got nothing.
That's basically, right? These guys, they have money, they have ambition, they have power in their respective industries and fields, but they don't have global power. They don't have sovereign power. And what they're finding is it's not easy to assert sovereign power in a world that's filled with it. So the ocean sucks. Fuck the ocean, right? It's hard to build any sort of permanent structure. It's damn near impossible to feed yourself sustainably. Nearby nations will clearly defend what they believe is their sovereign territory, even if it's outside of the strict definition of territorial waters. And it's costly as all hell. I mean, ancient civilizations knew that Poseidon was a real dick, and they respected the sea. Libertarians convinced themselves that their money made them more powerful. And so, as far as I'm concerned, Poseidon has chosen to humble them time and time again. So what do the libertarians do? They pivot back to the land. So
my question is, I guess, is a lot of like islands, you know, like Epstein Island or some of the other islands that people buy, they own them, but it's kind of like I own my house, right? It's like I don't really own the property, even though I say I do. The government, at the end of the day, it rules me. So these islands are really technically under the umbrella of like another country.
They always are.
Right?
Pretty much all land is under the sovereignty or jurisdiction of one state or another. Yeah, so it doesn't matter that buying an island is no different than you and I buying our houses, right? That land belongs to the town, and the town is part of the state, and the state is part of the country. And ultimately, so yeah, you own your house, but technically you're just renting it from the state in a lot of ways, which
right. So that's why they never just bought an island and say, okay, this is this country, and because the country who the umbrella would have been like, are you fucking insane?
Well, that's essentially what they tried to do in this case, right? They have tried to do that, but again, the country's like, no, this is our territory, and we're not just selling it to you to let you do what we want. We're still in charge. It's still our legal system. You still owe us taxes. You're still subject to our laws and all that. We're going to get to that. They do try to poke at that a little bit more. So remember how Nozick and Rothbard had championed that policy of forget parliamentary politics to enact change to the system? Well, there's a new generation of libertarians now, and they kind of saw that, hey, what was going on? We see these seasteads and all this is difficult and whatnot. So why don't we actually try to take the government and the system head on instead of avoiding it altogether? So this is going to bring us to Grafton, New Hampshire. So the Freetown Project was a libertarian project, and they picked Grafton, New Hampshire, which had a population of about 1,000, for a takeover. The idea was libertarians move in numbers, they run for local office, they get into power, they slash taxes and services to the bone, and they prove that voluntary cooperation can replace government coercion, as they saw it. Lower taxes meant more individual freedom to spend your money how you want. Minimal zoning meant that you could live in an RV, a cabin, a yurt, whatever, a cardboard box that you put yourself on your land, whatever. No building codes, no permits, no bureaucrats telling you what to do with your property, to your exact point that you were just bringing up about the land and who owns it. And they did it. They won office in Grafton, New Hampshire, and they started on their agenda. And of course, what happens? Well, infrastructure deteriorates. It turns out that living in society with other people is actually complicated. It's not as simple as these wealthy guys who are successful at one thing want to believe that it is because they just bark orders at someone or they can bully someone at a negotiating table. So budget cuts and any new resistance to spending weakened police, fire, road maintenance, all the boring stuff that makes a town functional. Legal disputes just continue to multiply and they slash the ability to process them. Crime increased, including property crime and conflict between residents over land use and shared resources. Basically, it was every man for himself with a no laws, no rules attitude and no sense of responsibility to each other, which led to Grafton's most famous failure, and why it tends to be quoted many times. With the municipal services cut to the bone or completely eliminated, trash management and enforcement of storage requirements were completely swept aside. You can do what you want on your land. You're a libertarian. So guess what? I am a libertarian, and I have the individual freedom to manage garbage however I want. But Grafton had wildlife. Specifically, Grafton and the surrounding area had bears, and lots of them. And if you know anything about bears, they're clever, and they routinely break through puzzles and systems designed to keep them away from food. So the lack of any requirements over how to store and manage food waste and no ability to enforce any standards, even if you had agreed to them, led to what was basically an invasion of bears looking for easy access to poorly stored food and food waste throughout the town of Grafton. Essentially, the libertarians invade, take over, and they fuck everything so badly that they get invaded by bears in return. So, in cutting that budget and services nothing and taking that staunch anti-tax, anti-regulation position, the town didn't have the resources or even the political will to address the bear problem. The collective action problem was stark, right? There was the individual freedom to manage garbage on your property however you wanted, created a shared risk for everybody that nobody could solve individually. All this rugged individualism failed. And not because the people were bad or stupid, but because some problems actually require collective solutions to solve. You can't just solve everything on your own. And so when everyone has the maximum freedom to do what they want with their property, all these externalities start to multiply. Your decision to skip a trash service affects your neighbor's bear problem. Your decision not to fund road maintenance affects everyone who uses that road. These aren't theoretical. They're the basic, mundane, day-to-day, boring realities that make a policy of just let individuals figure it out fall apart. Right. So Grafton shows like what happens when you actually implement governance by individual choice in a real community with real infrastructure needs and no sense of obligation to the greater community. So it doesn't produce freedom. It produces degraded service, unresolved conflicts, and eventually state intervention when things got bad enough. They needed to be rescued.
Yeah, it seems that libertarianism is just very, very short-sighted thinking. There's no, I'll do whatever I want. I could build whatever I want. I could how, but that's what you have. Like when you, was a future when you sell that house and somebody else buys your house, you're like, the fuck did I just buy?
Yep.
Got wires going everywhere. They didn't build this. They didn't get inspected. They didn't get anything done right. There's reasons we have these things in place because we tried it a different way once before, and then we learned that didn't work that well. And maybe the solution's not perfect, but it is better than the other way. You need a form of government with certain kinds of rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm. It's not even like you need a government. You just need to have a sense of obligation to each other. If you think about all these guys who complain, I got to put in for this permit. This is my land, my property. I bought it. I should be able to do what I want with it. Just look at shanty towns that pop up in Brazilian favelas, in Manila, in the Philippines slums, right? That's what you get when you're allowed to do whatever the hell you want and you don't have the budget to do anything better, right? Like building codes and all these things, they're annoying, and the permits, they're annoying. I get it. I own property. I have to go through these things as well sometimes, and things that I want to do, I can't necessarily do. But there's, generally speaking, a good reason for these because, you go to buy that house next and you go, what the hell were you doing? You see all this DIY work and you're like, how did this place not burn down yet? It's a danger.
Yeah, exactly.
So the problem is these guys They took a look at this and they didn't conclude, well, maybe we need some collective governance and maybe pure individual ruggedness isn't the solution. They instead kind of concluded we need to try this somewhere with fewer constraints where we can really start from scratch without pesky neighbors who want things like trash pickup and functioning schools and roads. So
I thought you were just going to say the problem was they realized was just the bears. Only the bears were the problem, because that sounds like our government now.
Yeah, the solution is move somewhere where there aren't bears and do it. Yeah, clearly, right? That's how you fix this now. So while Grafton was imploding during that Free Town project, there was a broader Free State project, and they were playing a longer game. So starting around 2001, their plan was to get 20,000 libertarians and libertarian-minded people to move to New Hampshire. And in similar way of Grafton, to use their concentrated voting power to transform it into a minimal government haven. And the pitch was explicitly political. Work within the system, elect sympathetic legislators, block tax increases, and expand gun rights and civil liberties. That's what it was, right? Is
there a reason why they picked New Hampshire? Is it because it has a smaller population?
New Hampshire is already extremely libertarian-leaning. And okay. I spent a lot of...
Is that the live free or die state?
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay.
And it is very different from its neighbors in New England that way, right? It is very right way. And it's become more generally, there's always been that undercurrent of this kind of anti-governmentism over there. So it kind of worked. The project claims they moved some 6,000 participants as of 2024, right, through the project. And dozens of free state-aligned legislators have won seats in the state house. They track pro-liberty votes and have influenced some policy. New Hampshire has resisted sale and income taxes, expanded gun rights, and reduced some regulations. But unlike Grafton, broadly speaking, New Hampshire is still a functioning state. And it turns out that when you're working within existing democratic systems, that means you're accountable to voters who might not share your vision. And so you can influence policy, but you can't transform the basic social contract on a whim. And that's an important distinction, right? People want libraries, roads, public schools. And in a democracy, those preferences matter. And in society, these preferences matter. Even if they frustrate your theory of like optimal governance is this rugged individualism and leave me alone. So I think this free state movement is probably starting to, we see what's going on here, right? The broader movement is fracturing a bit. You've got these people doing electoral politics in New Hampshire, which is making incremental gains and is pretty standard liberal parliamentary democracy in action. And the other group, though, is looking at that going, that's too slow. The problem is democracy itself, and that they don't just need influence, they need sovereignty. They need to write the rules themselves and not just convince others to adopt them. So if you can't transform an existing state through democratic means, maybe you need to create a new state entirely. But first, Adam, let's take a break here because we're going long and we'll do part 2 when we come back. Everyone, be good. And for the love of God, just pay your damn taxes, deal with it, be angry for 15 minutes like the rest of us and move on.
Like it.
All right, see y'all in part 2. Bye.
See you in a few. Idiots Seeking Village is a production of Village Idiots Media. For more, find us online at villageidiotsmedia.com or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and wherever you get podcasts.